The emergency signal burst through space like a scream in the darkness. On Zentros Prime, the massive crystal towers of the Galactic Council caught the desperate message from across the galaxy. Inside the Great Chamber, hundreds of alien representatives sat in their floating biopods, watching holographic displays that showed a world dying. The images were heartbreaking. Veltari families ran through burning streets, carrying their children as explosions lit up the sky behind them. These were farmers and teachers, not soldiers. Their planet grew food for dozens of worlds, their people known throughout the galaxy for their kindness and peaceful ways. Now Kethmer warships hung in orbit like dark vultures, raining death on defenseless cities. Emergency transmission from Veltari Prime announced the Council's communication system. The voice that came through was broken, filled with static and terror. "This is Governor Helani of Veltari Prime. Our defense grid has fallen. Kethmer invasion forces are landing in all major population centers. We have no military capability to resist." The governor's voice cracked as another explosion echoed in the background. "Estimated time until complete occupation is 48 hours. Our people are being rounded up for slavery processing. Please anyone who receives this transmission. We have 3 million civilians with nowhere to run. Our children are hiding in caves and underground shelters. If there is anyone in the galaxy who still believes in protecting the innocent, we beg you to help us." The transmission cut to static, leaving the council chamber in heavy silence. Ambassador Minji Kim watched from the human section as one by one, the galaxy's most powerful species, began making excuses. The Zenthari delegate spoke first, his crystalline body flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as nervousness. "This is truly tragic," he said, "but the Kethmer Empire has superior military technology. Any intervention would require months of planning and massive fleet coordination." Other delegates nodded in agreement, relieved someone else had said. At first, the Aquari representative, speaking through her water-filled breathing apparatus, added her own concerns. "The logistics alone are impossible. Our nearest fleet is stationed 3 months away by hyperspace jump. By the time we could organize a proper response through official channels, the situation will have resolved itself." Ouch. Everyone knew that resolution meant 3 million Veltarian chains. More excuses followed. The Felonus spoke about treaty obligations that prevented military action. The hegemony delegates cited budget concerns and the need for proper authorization. Through 17 different committees, each species found perfectly logical reasons why they couldn't help. Even as the images of burning Veltari cities continued playing on the chamber's displays. Minji Kim had been Earth's ambassador for only 2 years, but she had already learned how galactic politics worked. Everyone talked about peace and cooperation during formal sessions, but when real danger appeared, they hid behind bureaucracy and procedure. She thought about her own children back on Earth, safe in their beds, and imagined them running through burning streets with no one coming to help. Standing slowly, Mingi activated her delegation's speaking system. Her voice was calm, but carried clearly through the massive chamber. "Human delegation requests permission to address this crisis." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Hundreds of alien heads turned toward the human section, and the chamber fell completely silent. In the 2 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, they had been mostly ignored. Earth was classified as a death world, a high-gravity planet with extreme weather and dangerous wildlife that produced unusually tough inhabitants. Most council members viewed humans as primitive newcomers who would need centuries to catch up with galactic civilization. Some species whispered that humans were too violent and unpredictable to be trusted with serious responsibilities. Now those same aliens stared at the human ambassador with expressions ranging from surprise to outright alarm. The idea that the newest council members, representatives from a species barely 50 years into space travel, would volunteer for a military mission that seasoned galactic powers wouldn't touch seemed either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. The Zenthari delegate's crystalline body flared bright red, a sure sign of panic among his species. "Absolutely not," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber's translation systems. "The humans have barely left their own solar system. This situation requires experienced military coordination from established galactic powers, not reckless newcomers who don't understand proper warfare. Other delegates began nodding in agreement. The Felonus representative stood on his 6 legs, his fur bristling with agitation. The humans have been in space for what, 50 Earth years? The Veltari have been established colonists for over 2 centuries. How can a species that just learned to travel between stars possibly handle a military crisis that we ourselves find too dangerous? Mingy remained perfectly calm as chaos erupted around her. She had expected this reaction. Humans had been underestimated since their first day in the Council, treated like children who needed constant supervision. Most alien species looked at Earth's violent history and harsh environment and assumed humans were either too primitive or too unstable for serious galactic responsibilities. She activated her datapad, and detailed holographic displays appeared. Above the human delegation booth, the images showed fleet compositions, tactical analysis, and deployment timelines that made several alien military advisors lean forward with sudden interest. Humanity can have a full response fleet in the Veltari. System within 1 standard week, Minji announced, her voice cutting through the protests. Our military analysts have been studying the Kethmer Empire since we joined the Council. Their siege tactics haven't changed in 300 years. They rely on overwhelming orbital firepower and slow ground advances because that's what works. Against species who fight according to traditional galactic warfare doctrine, the chamber erupted in multilingual protests. The Aquari delegate splashed angrily in her water tank. Possible. It takes us 3 months just to organize a proper military response through established channels. How can humans claim to deploy faster than civilizations with thousands of years of experience? A hegemony representative, his mechanical voice, translator crackling with static, added his own objections. Even if humans could deploy quickly, the Kethmer Empire has conquered 17 worlds using proven military superiority. What makes Earth think they can succeed where established powers would hesitate to act? Minji expanded her holographic display to show human ship designs and manufacturing capabilities. The alien delegates stared in confusion at the images. Human warships looked nothing like standard galactic designs. Where most species built elegant vessels with powerful shields and long-range energy weapons, human ships appeared crude and heavily armored, bristling with weapons that looked almost primitive. The galactic community has spent centuries perfecting warfare based on energy shields, plasma weapons, and defensive positioning, Minji explained. The Kethmer have adapted to fight against these standard tactics, but they've never encountered human military doctrine, which was developed fighting wars on a death world, where survival meant adapting faster than your enemies. The Zenthari delegate's crystal body flickered between red and orange, showing extreme agitation. This is madness. Humans don't understand the complexities of interstellar warfare. Your species still fights with kinetic projectiles and chemical explosives like primitives. The Kethmar will destroy any human fleet within hours of engagement. Maybe Minji admitted with a slight smile. But while you're debating proper procedures and calculating risk assessments, 3 million innocent people are being loaded into slave ships. Human military doctrine has one simple principle that apparently doesn't exist in galactic warfare when good people are in danger. You help them immediately and worry about the consequences later. The debate continued for hours. Species after species stood to explain why human intervention was impossible, dangerous, or diplomatically inappropriate. Some argued that allowing humans to attempt this mission would set a dangerous precedent of reckless military action. Others worried that human failure would destabilize the entire galactic security structure. But as the hours passed, one fact became impossible to ignore. Nobody else was volunteering. The great galactic civilizations, with all their experience and military might, were paralyzed by their own bureaucracy and fear of the Kethmer Empire's reputation. Finally, the council speaker called for a formal vote. The question before us is whether to authorize human military intervention in the Veltari crisis. All those in favor? The voting display showed a narrow majority in favor, but Minji could see it wasn't enthusiasm that carried the vote. It was desperation. Most delegates voted yes, simply because no other options existed. They expected to receive news of humanity's swift and complete defeat within days, but at least they could tell themselves they had tried something. In their private communications, many alien leaders were already preparing statements expressing regret over humanity's noble but doomed sacrifice. Admiral Ginho Park was reviewing maintenance schedules for the Mars Defense Fleet when the priority message arrived at Luna Naval Station. The emergency signal carried the highest possible clearance codes, and within seconds of reading the deployment order, Jinho was already reaching for his communication panel. He had been waiting for this moment since humanity first learned about the galaxy beyond their solar system. All stations. This is Admiral Park. His voice echoed through the command center. Priority Alpha deployment authorized. Task Force Thunder activates immediately. The effect was instant. Emergency lights began flashing throughout Luna Station as officers rushed to their posts. Similar alerts were already cascading across the entire human military network. From the shipyards orbiting Mars to the patrol bases protecting the outer colonies, what happened next would have been impossible for any other species in the galaxy. Most alien civilizations required months of careful planning, committee approvals, and diplomatic negotiations before deploying military forces. The idea of assembling a full battle fleet in less than 2 days seemed impossible to species that viewed war as a carefully orchestrated political process, but humans had learned warfare on a planet where hesitation meant death. Earth's military doctrine had been forged in countless conflicts where rapid response often meant the difference between victory and complete destruction. When the Terran Defense Force was created after first contact with alien civilizations, its entire structure was designed around one simple principle: be ready to deploy anywhere in the galaxy within 72 hours. Captain Hyasuli coordinated the massive logistics operation from Terra Station, the primary military hub orbiting Earth. Her screens showed ship after ship powering up across the solar system. Destroyers from the asteroid belt mining stations, heavy cruisers from the Jupiter patrol squadrons, and assault carriers from the deep space exploration fleets all received the same message: full combat deployment to unknown territory. Admiral, we have confirmation from all sectors, Hayasu reported as her fingers flew across multiple control panels. 197 vessels responding to deployment orders. 3 ships in dry dock for major repairs, but their crews are transferring. 2 reserve vessels. We'll have 200 ships ready within 48 hours. Meanwhile, Captain Tien Choi oversaw the weapons loading operations from the orbital armories surrounding Mars. Human warships carried a mix of weapons that would have seemed primitive to most galactic powers, while other species had perfected elegant, energy-based weapon systems. Humans still relied heavily on kinetic projectiles, explosive missiles, and what aliens dismissively called chemical rockets. Loading complete on the first wave, Taeyon announced over the fleet communication network. It's kinetic penetrators, fusion warheads, and armor-piercing rounds for close engagement. The alien textbooks say this stuff is obsolete, but I'd rather trust weapons that have actually won wars than energy beams that look pretty in space battles. Dr. Soman Park worked frantically in her laboratory aboard the research station Galileo, analyzing every piece of intelligence humanity had gathered about the Kethmer Empire. Her team had been studying alien military technology since first contact, specifically looking for weaknesses that human forces could exploit. Their energy shields are definitely impressive, she reported to Admiral Ginho during a secure video conference. The Kethmer have perfected defensive systems that can absorb massive amounts of energy-based attacks. But look at this. Her holographic display showed detailed analyses of captured alien technology. These shields are specifically designed to disperse plasma and particle beam weapons. They've never been tested against solid projectiles moving at the velocities our railguns can achieve. The more Dr. Salmon studied Kethmer military doctrine, the more confident she became. Admiral, they've been fighting the same way for 3 centuries because it works against standard galactic warfare. Energy weapons at long range, defensive positioning, slow, methodical advances. They've probably never faced an enemy that prefers getting close and hitting hard. As the 72-hour deadline approached, something unprecedented was happening in Earth's solar system. 200 warships, ranging from fast attack destroyers to massive assault carriers, were assembling, in formations that no galactic power had ever seen before. Each ship carried crews trained not just in space combat, but in the kind of aggressive, adaptable warfare that had evolved on humanity's dangerous homeworld. The alien observers stationed in the solar system watched in amazement as the human fleet completed its assembly in exactly 48 hours. Most galactic species took longer than that just to file the proper paperwork for military deployment. Yet here were the humans, launching the largest concentrated military force in galactic history, faster than most civilizations could organize. A diplomatic meeting. When Task Force Thunder finally departed from Earth's gravity well, it represented something the galaxy had never seen before. An entire species willing to risk everything to protect people they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. War Commander Zelthik of the Kethmer Empire was reviewing invasion progress reports when his sensor operator began shouting in alarm. "Commander, massive energy signatures detected. Multiple contacts appearing throughout the system." The bridge of the flagship Dominator erupted in confusion as proximity alarms blared and tactical displays lit up with warnings. Zelthik had conquered 17 worlds, using the same proven strategy. Surround the planet with overwhelming firepower. Demand surrender, then slowly tighten the noose until resistance collapsed. The Veltari had been following the expected pattern perfectly, their pathetic defense grid destroyed, their government begging for mercy, their population hiding in caves and underground shelters. But the energy readings his sensors were detecting made no sense. According to the displays, over 200 warships had just appeared simultaneously throughout the Veltari system. That was impossible. No species in the galaxy could coordinate fleet movements on that scale, especially not with the precision required for simultaneous arrival. "Sensor malfunction," Zelthik declared confidently. "Run full diagnostics. Some kind of electromagnetic interference from the planet's magnetic field." But even as he spoke, the main view screen was filling with images that made his confidence evaporate. Ship after ship materialized in perfect formation, each one appearing exactly where it needed to be to create an inescapable trap. Admiral Jinho Park studied the tactical display from the bridge of his flagship, the TDF Sajong. The human fleet had executed the jump maneuver flawlessly, emerging from hyperspace in a three-dimensional envelope that completely surrounded the Kethmar siege force. Every escape route was blocked, every angle of attack covered. "Perfect positioning," reported Navigation Officer Yoonho Kim. "The alien fleet is trapped between our formations and the planet's gravity well. If they try to run, they'll have to go through us first." The human ships looked nothing like the elegant vessels preferred by most galactic civilizations, where alien designs emphasize smooth curves and aesthetic beauty. Human warships were built for one purpose: winning fights. They bristled with weapons, their hulls scarred from countless training exercises in Earth's asteroid fields, their armor plating designed to absorb punishment rather than avoid it. "Open a channel to all vessels in the system," Admiral Jinho ordered, his voice, when it reached every ship in the Veltari system, carried the calm authority of someone who had trained his entire life for this moment. "All vessels. This is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered Veltari space without authorization and initiated hostile action against civilian populations." On the bridge of the Dominator, War Commander Zelthik stared at the transmission in disbelief. The speaker was clearly human, one of those primitive Deathworlders who had only recently joined the galactic community. What were they doing here? How had they assembled such a massive fleet without any intelligence networks detecting it? "You have 30 seconds to cease all hostilities and withdraw from Veltari space immediately," Admiral Jinho continued. "This is your only warning. Any further aggressive action will be met with overwhelming force." Zelthik's tactical training kicked in. 30 seconds was barely enough time to analyze the human fleet composition, but what he saw made him laugh out loud. These ships were using primitive kinetic weapons and chemical propulsion systems. Their armor looked thick but crude. They were probably relying on outdated technology that the Kethmer Empire had surpassed centuries ago. Helmsman, target the nearest human vessel, Zelthic ordered. Fire plasma cannons, full power. Let's show these primitives what real military technology looks like. The massive energy beams lanced out toward the human destroyer TDF Inchin. Enough concentrated firepower to vaporize most galactic warships, Captain Hyasu Lee watched calmly from her command chair as the alien plasma beams struck her ship. The energy dispersed harmlessly across the Inchin's adaptive armor plating, systems specifically designed to handle the kind of energy weapons favored by galactic militaries. Her ship didn't even shudder from the impact. Interesting, she commented to her weapons officer. The plasma cannons pack about as much punch as our training simulations predicted. Admiral, this is Captain Lee aboard the Inchin. The Kethmer have opened fire with plasma weapons. No damage to report. Requesting permission to return fire. Admiral Jinho's response echoed across every human ship in the fleet. All vessels, weapons free. Rules of engagement are now active. Show them why you don't threaten innocent people when humans are watching. What happened next lasted exactly 17 minutes and changed galactic warfare forever. The Kethmer expected a traditional space battle, long-range energy exchanges, defensive maneuvering, gradual escalation over hours or days. Instead, they faced human combat doctrine developed in the brutal environment of Earth's own solar system. Human ships accelerated directly toward their targets, closing to ranges where their kinetic weapons could punch through alien shields like paper. Railguns fired solid projectiles at velocities that Kethmer defensive systems had never been designed to handle. Missile swarms overwhelmed alien point defense networks with sheer numbers rather than sophisticated technology. The alien siege fleet, trapped between the human formations and unable to retreat, found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of galactic warfare. When the shooting stopped, most Kethmer vessels were either destroyed or fleeing in panic, leaving behind their troop transports and support ships like abandoned toys. Colonel Minho Kim studied the tactical display aboard the assault transport, Soul's Hammer, as his ship descended through Veltari Prime's atmosphere. The images showed a nightmare scenario. Kethmer ground forces had dug into defensive positions throughout the northern continent, using Veltari civilians as human shields while they consolidated their occupation. Sir, orbital bombardment could clear these positions in minutes, suggested his tactical officer, pointing to the alien encampments scattered across the continent. Standard galactic doctrine calls for surgical strikes from orbit to minimize ground engagement. Minho shook his head, watching the thermal scans that showed thousands of Veltari civilians trapped in and around the alien positions. Negative. Those energy weapons would cook everything in a 3-kilometer radius? We didn't come here to liberate a graveyard? We're going in close and personal? The Kethmer ground commander, or Captain Nerthok, felt confident in his defensive positions. His forces had followed standard galactic military procedure, established fortified camps with overlapping fields of fire, deploy energy shields too, protect against orbital strikes, and wait for the enemy to either negotiate or attempt costly frontal assaults. This strategy had worked perfectly on 17 previous worlds. But as night fell over the northern continent, Nerthok began receiving disturbing reports from his perimeter guards. Motion sensors were triggering randomly, communication posts were going silent without explanation, and several patrol units had simply vanished without sending distress signals. Probably technical malfunctions, Nerthok told his staff officers. These primitive human devices can't possibly penetrate our defensive grid. Maintain standard watch rotations. Captain Jun Lee crawled through the dense undergrowth surrounding the main Kethmer command post, her thermal camouflage suit rendering her nearly invisible to alien sensors. Behind her, 24 Marines moved like shadows through the darkness, each one carrying weapons and equipment specifically designed for close-quarters combat on hostile worlds. Human military doctrine had evolved in Earth's most dangerous environments, from Arctic wastelands where a single mistake meant death, to jungle warfare where survival required moving silently through terrain filled with deadly predators. The skills that kept humans alive on their Deathworld home planet proved devastatingly effective against aliens who had grown comfortable with sterile, long-range combat. Target acquired, whispered Sergeant Daeho Kim through the squad's communication. Network. The demolitions expert had identified the alien command post's main communication array, a towering structure that coordinated all Kethmer forces across the continent. Charges are ready for placement. June checked her chronometer. Across the continent, dozens of similar operations were happening simultaneously. Human forces had infiltrated alien positions that galactic military experts would have considered impregnable, moving through defensive lines like ghosts while the Kethmar remained completely unaware of their presence. All teams report ready, came the whispered confirmations through her earpiece. Execute in 3, 2, 1. The coordinated assault began with a series of small explosions as communication towers throughout the continent went offline simultaneously. Suddenly blind and unable to coordinate with each other, Kethmer units found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Human Marines, merged from concealment positions that shouldn't have been possible to reach. They moved with the fluid coordination of predators who had trained in Earth's gravity wells and survived, environments that would kill most galactic species within hours. Their weapons, projectile rifles and chemical explosives that alien military theory considered obsolete, proved devastatingly effective against energy shields designed to stop plasma beams. Contact front, screamed a Kethmer soldier as kinetic rounds punched through his unit's defensive barrier. The aliens had never faced projectile weapons moving at such high velocities. Their energy shields, designed to disperse heat and radiation, offered no protection against solid metal traveling faster than their sensors could track. War Captain Nurthok watched in horror as his tactical display showed red warning indicators, spreading across the continent like a virus. Unit after unit was going offline, defensive positions were being overrun, and his carefully planned occupation was collapsing faster than he could comprehend. How are they moving so fast? He demanded of his intelligence officer. Galactic doctrine says ground operations should take weeks to coordinate properly. But humans didn't follow galactic doctrine. They'd learned warfare on a planet where every ecosystem was designed to kill them, where survival required adapting faster than anything else in their environment. The same instincts that helped human ancestors hunt mammoth and survive ice ages now allowed human soldiers to outmaneuver aliens who had grown soft from centuries of predictable, ritualized combat. Within 18 hours, every major Kethmer position on the continent had been neutralized. The aliens' sophisticated energy weapons proved useless against human armor designed to protect soldiers from Earth's deadly radiation and extreme temperature variations. Meanwhile, human projectile weapons, dismissed by galactic powers as primitive, technology punched through Kethmer protective gear like it was made of paper. Package secured, Captain June reported as her demolitions expert finished placing charges on the final communication relay. Kethmer Ground Command is completely offline, all major population centers are secure, and civilian casualties are minimal. The speed and precision of the human ground assault left galactic military observers stunned. What should have taken weeks of careful planning and months of execution had been completed in less than a day. With minimal damage to the very people, the operation was designed to protect Governor. Melitha had spent her entire life believing that war was something that happened to other people, on distant worlds she would never visit. As the elected leader of Veltari Prime's largest agricultural settlement, her biggest concerns had always been crop yields, weather patterns, and trade negotiations. The closest she had come to violence was mediating disputes between farming cooperatives over water rights. Then the Kethmer invasion began. Suddenly her peaceful world became a nightmare of burning cities and screaming civilians. She had watched helplessly as alien soldiers rounded up her people like livestock, loading them onto transport ships bound for slave markets across the galaxy. For 3 days, she had hidden in underground shelters with hundreds of other survivors, listening to the sounds of destruction above and waiting for death or capture. Now she stood in the ruins of her city's central plaza, watching something that challenged everything she thought she knew about warfare. Human soldiers moved through the streets with a precision that seemed almost choreographed. But what amazed her wasn't their efficiency in combat. It was what they did immediately afterward. The same Marines who had eliminated Kethmer positions, with ruthless effectiveness, were now carefully carrying wounded Veltari civilians to medical stations. Soldiers who had moved like deadly predators through the night were gently helping elderly families find safe shelter. The transformation was so complete that Melitha wondered if she was watching the same species. "I don't understand," she told. Dr. Soman Park, as the human scientist, worked to establish a field clinic in what remained of the government complex. "The Galactic database described your species as violent and unpredictable. We were told that humans were dangerous because they came from a death world that made them naturally aggressive." Salman looked up from treating a young Veltari child's plasma burns, her hands moving with the gentle precision of someone who had spent years learning to heal as well as harm. "The database isn't wrong," she said with a slight smile. "We can be both violent and unpredictable when we need to be. But violence should always serve compassion, not replace it. The whole point of being good at fighting is to protect people who can't protect themselves." The child she was treating, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, by Veltari, Standers had been caught in a Kethmer energy weapon blast while trying to reach her family's shelter. The burns would have been fatal without immediate treatment, but Summon's portable medical equipment was already accelerating the healing process. "Will she be okay?" Melitha asked, watching the child's breathing stabilize as Summon's treatments took effect. "She'll be fine," Solman assured her, adjusting the regeneration field around the child's injuries. "These burns look worse than they are." Human medical technology was developed to handle much more severe trauma. We had to learn to treat injuries that would be instantly fatal to most galactic species. Lieutenant Naracho approached carrying a stack of communication devices, her expression mixing professional efficiency with genuine concern for the people around her, as the fleet's cultural exchange officer. Her job was to establish communication protocols with liberated populations, but she had found herself spending most of her time simply trying to help the Voltari understand what was happening. "Governor, we've restored communication networks throughout the city," Nari reported. "Your people can now contact family members in other settlements. We've also established supply distribution points in 12 locations: food, clean water, and temporary shelter materials." Melitha stared at the communication device Nari handed her. "You've done all this in just 6 hours? The Kethmer spent 3 days destroying our infrastructure, and you've already begun rebuilding it?" "Human engineering teams are used to working in disaster zones," Nari explained. "When you come from a planet where earthquakes, hurricanes, and volcanic eruptions happen regularly, you learn to restore essential services very quickly. Our people have been dealing with large-scale emergencies since before we left our homeworld." What continued to amaze the Veltari was the complete transformation they witnessed in human behavior. During the liberation assault they had watched, human soldiers move through alien positions with a lethal efficiency that terrified even their rescuers. These warriors had eliminated trained Kethmer, soldiers with a speed and precision that seemed almost superhuman, but within minutes of securing each area. Those same soldiers were distributing emergency food supplies to starving civilians, setting up temporary shelters for displaced families, and treating wounded Veltari with a gentleness that seemed impossible from beings who had just demonstrated such devastating combat effectiveness. "I've been studying galactic military doctrine my entire career," confided Veltari military advisor Kenthal as he watched human engineers repair a damaged water treatment facility. "Most species maintain clear separation between their military and civilian support operations. Combat forces fight, medical teams heal, engineers build. Each group has specific roles that don't overlap. But humans seem to expect every soldier to be capable of everything," he continued, watching a Marine squad that had been clearing alien positions 20 minutes earlier now helping elderly Veltari evacuate from damaged buildings. "They fight like predators, heal like doctors, and build like engineers." "How is this possible?" Lieutenant Nari smiled as she watched her fellow humans work. On Earth, survival often required being able to do everything at once. A single natural disaster could destroy an entire region, leaving survivors to handle combat, medical care, and reconstruction simultaneously. "We learned a long time ago that the people who protect you should also be the people who care for you. War Master Kelthanox had built his reputation on 17 consecutive planetary conquests, each one following the same proven formula. Overwhelm the enemy with superior firepower, demonstrate the futility of resistance, then accept their inevitable surrender. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Kethmer Empire had never encountered a species that could match their military might or challenge their tactical superiority. The emergency reports from Veltari Prime had been embarrassing, but not catastrophic. Local commanders had obviously underestimated some primitive human trickery, probably surprise attacks or desperate ramming maneuvers that caught the siege fleet off guard. Such tactics might work once against unprepared forces, but they would crumble against proper Kethmer military doctrine. Intelligence analysis confirms our assumptions, reported Fleet Commander Zefok, as the massive Kethmer Marta emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Veltari system. Human vessels show primitive design characteristics. Heavy armor plating suggests they rely on absorbing damage rather than avoiding it. Kinetic weapons indicate technological backwardness compared to our energy-based systems. Kelthanox studied the tactical displays from the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. 300 of the Empire's finest warships spread out in the classic battle formation that had conquered star systems across the galaxy. Each vessel was a masterpiece of military engineering, armed with plasma cannons that could vaporize asteroids, and protected by energy shields that had never been penetrated by enemy fire. Primitive species always make the same mistake, Kelthanox declared to his assembled fleet commanders. They believe that courage and desperation can overcome superior technology and training. We shall demonstrate why the Kethmer Empire rules. 17 worlds, while these Deathworlders have barely left their own star system. The plan was simple and had proven effective countless times before. The Kethmer fleet would advance in formation, using their superior range and firepower to destroy human vessels before they could close to effective combat distance. Any surviving human ships would be forced to surrender when faced with the Empire's overwhelming numerical superiority. Admiral Jinho Park observed the approaching alien fleet from the bridge of his flagship, the TDF Sejong. His tactical officers were already analyzing the Kethmer formation, identifying weaknesses that the aliens probably didn't even realize they had. Classic galactic battle doctrine, noted Commander Young-Ho Lee as he studied the enemy approach. Single formation, centralized command structure, predictable movement patterns. They're fighting exactly like the textbooks said they would, which means they expect us to fight the same way, Admiral Jinho replied with a slight smile. Captain, Taiyan, signaled the fleet. Deploy Wolfpack formation and initiate distributed combat protocols. Let's show them what happens when you bring traditional warfare to fight Deathworlders. What happened next challenged every assumption in Kethmer military theory. Instead of forming a defensive line or attempting to match the alien formation, the human fleet simply scattered. 200 ships broke into dozens of small squadrons that began moving independently throughout the system, each group following its own tactical plan while maintaining coordination through secure communication. Networks. What are they doing? Demanded Fleet Commander Zefok as his sensors tracked human vessels accelerating in seemingly random directions. This formation makes no tactical sense. They're abandoning any possibility of concentrated firepower or mutual support. The battle began. The Kethmer quickly realized they weren't fighting one coordinated enemy, they were fighting dozens of separate engagements simultaneously. Human destroyer squadrons struck from unexpected angles, while heavy cruiser groups punched through alien formations and disappeared before the Kethmer could respond effectively. Commander Yoon-Ha Kim led her 4 destroyers in a high-speed flanking maneuver that brought them around the Kethmer left wing at an angle no alien commander had anticipated. Target their command vessels, she ordered, as her ships unleashed kinetic rounds into the alien formation. Take out their coordination, and they can't adapt to distributed tactics. Meanwhile, Captain Hyesu Lee coordinated her heavy cruiser squadron. In a direct assault on the Kethmer Center formation, instead of engaging at long range like galactic doctrine demanded, her ships accelerated directly toward the alien line, closing to distances where human weapons could overwhelm enemy shields through sheer kinetic force. Impossible, screamed War Master Kelthanox, as his tactical display showed red warning indicators spreading throughout his fleet. How can they coordinate so many independent actions? Their communication networks should be overwhelmed by the complexity. But humans had learned coordination in Earth's most chaotic environments, from natural disasters that required thousands of rescue teams to work independently while maintaining overall mission objectives, to military operations where small units had to adapt rapidly to changing battlefield conditions without waiting for orders from Central Command. The Kethmer Empire's centralized command structure, which had proven so effective against species that fought according to established galactic conventions, became a critical weakness when facing an enemy that refused to follow traditional rules. While alien commanders struggled to process reports from dozens of simultaneous engagements, human squadron leaders were already adapting their tactics and exploiting new opportunities. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can coordinate responses," reported Fleet Commander Zephok, as another section of the Kethmer formation collapsed under coordinated human assault. Their attack patterns are completely unpredictable. Every time we adjust to counter one threat, 3 more appear from different vectors. The battle that War Master Kelthanox had expected to win within hours stretched into a nightmare of confusion and defeat as human forces demonstrated that superior technology meant nothing when facing an enemy that fought smarter rather than harder. Communications Officer Yunali's voice cut through the bridge noise aboard the TDF, Sejong, as she processed incoming transmissions from across the battlefield. "Sir, we're receiving multiple surrender requests from surviving Kethmer vessels. They're requesting immediate ceasefire and offering unconditional withdrawal from Veltari space." Admiral Jinho Park studied the tactical display showing the remnants of what had been the Kethmer Empire's most powerful battle fleet. Scattered debris fields marked where alien warships had been destroyed, while the few surviving vessels limped away with critical damage to their propulsion and weapon systems. The engagement had lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes, ending with the complete destruction of an enemy force that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. But the Admiral's expression remained grim as he reviewed intelligence reports that had been flooding in throughout the battle. "Accepting their surrender here won't solve the real problem," he told his senior staff. "Long-range reconnaissance has identified the source of these invasions." Holographic display shifted to show star charts of the surrounding systems. 3 separate installations appeared on the screen, each one pulsing with tactical importance markers. "Kethmer forward staging areas," Admiral Ginho explained to his assembled commanders. "Military academy on Vrexstar, where they train invasion specialists. Main weapons depot at Korith Station supplying their expansion fleets. Command and logistics center at Nethys Prime coordinating their entire operation." Captain Taeyun Choi studied the intelligence data with growing understanding. "They've been using these bases to launch systematic conquests across this entire sector. Even if we defeat their fleet here, they'll just rebuild and try again in a few years." "Exactly," Admiral Jinho confirmed. "We didn't come all this way to win one battle. Came to ensure that peaceful species never have to face this threat again." Task Force Thunder divides into 3 battle groups. Simultaneous strikes on all staging areas. We end this permanently. What followed demonstrated capabilities that sent shockwaves through galactic intelligence networks. Most alien military forces required weeks of planning and coordination to execute operations across multiple star systems. The idea of launching 3 separate assault missions simultaneously, each one precisely timed to maximize strategic impact, seemed impossible for any single species to accomplish. But human military doctrine had evolved from Earth's history of global conflicts, where success often required coordinating operations across multiple continents while maintaining perfect timing. Despite communication delays and logistical challenges, the same organizational skills that had allowed humans to manage planetary wars now enabled them to conduct military operations on an interstellar scale. Colonel Minho Kim led Battle Group Alpha toward Vrexstar, the heavily fortified world where the Kethmer Empire trained its military officers. The planet's defense grid had been designed to repel conventional galactic assault tactics, but the human approach bypassed those defenses entirely. Instead of attempting orbital bombardment or siege warfare, Colonel Minho deployed rapid insertion. Teams that struck the Academy's critical infrastructure simultaneously. Primary targets secured, he reported as his forces disabled the training facility's main computer networks and communication systems. Kethmer officer training program is effectively crippled. It'll take them decades to rebuild this capability. Meanwhile, Captain June Lee coordinated Battle Group Beta's assault on Korath Station, the massive space-based weapons depot that supplied Kethmer invasion fleets throughout the sector. Her Marines used boarding tactics that alien defenders had never encountered, moving through the station's corridors with the same deadly efficiency they had demonstrated on Veltari Prime. Weapons depot secured, she announced as her demolitions. Teams began systematically destroying stockpiled armaments. Estimated 3 years' worth of invasion supplies neutralized. The Kethmer won't be launching any major offensives anytime soon. Battle Group Gamma, under Commander Yuna Kim, struck the command center at Nethys Prime with surgical precision. Rather than destroying the facility completely, her forces captured intact intelligence networks that revealed the full scope of Kethmer expansion plans. Intelligence goldmine acquired, she reported. We now have complete data on their planned invasions across 17 different systems. The coordinated assault lasted less than 12 hours from initiation to completion. 3 separate star systems, each one defended by military installations that had taken the Kethmer decades to construct, were simultaneously neutralized by human forces operating with a speed and precision that galactic powers had never witnessed before. Intelligence Chief Vorthok, one of the few surviving senior Kethmer officials, transmitted his final report to the Imperial Palace on the home world. The Deathworlders don't fight like any species we've encountered, he warned in his encrypted message. They don't just defeat immediate threats, they identify and eliminate future capabilities before they can develop. They fight like the entire galaxy is their territory to protect, not just their own worlds. The strategic implications were clear to anyone analyzing the human operations. In less than 2 weeks, a species that most galactic powers had dismissed as primitive newcomers had effectively dismantled an empire that had dominated this sector for 3 centuries. 6 months after the Veltari liberation, Ambassador Minji Kim walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council chambers and marveled at how much had changed. The building itself had been expanded twice to accommodate new member species, and the security protocols had been completely redesigned around human recommendations. Where once the halls had echoed with the quiet conversations of cautious diplomats, now they buzzed with the energy of civilizations that finally felt safe enough to participate in galactic politics. The council chamber that had once held 200 delegates now accommodated over 400 representatives from species across the galaxy. Many of these civilizations had spent centuries hiding in remote systems, too afraid of aggressive empires like the Kethmer to risk joining the galactic community. But news of humanity's rapid response capabilities had spread throughout the galaxy faster than any official diplomatic communication. The Terran Defense Forces formally accepted responsibility for rapid response operations throughout Council space. Mingi announced to the assembled delegates, her words carried a weight. That would have been impossible just months earlier, when humans had been dismissed as primitive newcomers. Humanity pledges to defend peaceful species against aggressive expansion by any power, regardless of their technological superiority or historical conquest records. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Governor Malitha, representing the Veltari delegation, stood to address the chamber. The Veltari people owe our freedom, our lives, and our future to human intervention, she declared. We have already signed a formal mutual defense pact with Earth, and we encourage all peaceful species to consider similar agreements. Within the first week following Minji's announcement, 3 additional species had requested bilateral defense treaties with humanity. The Aquari Federation, despite their initial skepticism about human capabilities, formally requested protection for their water world colonies. The Crystalline Collective, whose silicon-based physiology made them vulnerable to energy weapons, sought human assistance in developing more effective defensive strategies. Most surprising of all was the request from the hegemony worlds. Mechanical inhabitants had previously considered biological species too unpredictable for serious military cooperation. Human tactical adaptability exceeds our computational models, their representative explained. We calculate significant defensive advantages through alliance with Terran forces. Admiral Ginho Park stood on the observation deck of Luna Naval Station, watching construction crews work around the clock to complete the Joint Defense Academy. The facility would train alien personnel in human combat techniques. But more importantly, it would teach the fundamental principles that guided human military doctrine. The curriculum emphasizes something most galactic species have forgotten, explained Dr. Soman Park during the Academy's dedication ceremony. Superior firepower should serve protective purposes, not conquering ones. We're not teaching aliens how to be better warriors, we're teaching them how to be better protectors. The Academy's first class included officers from 12 different species, each one learning human approaches to rapid deployment, adaptive tactics, and civilian protection. The most popular course, surprisingly, focused on post-combat humanitarian operations, how to transition immediately from devastating military efficiency to gentle rescue and reconstruction work. Most galactic military training treats combat and peacekeeping as completely separate functions, observed Commander Young-Ho Lee, the Academy's Director of Instruction. But humans learned long ago that the people who protect you should also be the people who care for you. Our students are amazed by the concept that the same soldier can be both a lethal warrior and a compassionate healer. Perhaps the most dramatic change in galactic politics came from an unexpected source. The Kethmer Empire, reduced to just 7 core worlds after their failed expansion attempts, had formally requested admission to the Galactic Council under human protection. Their emperor's message to the assembly was brief but profound. We have learned that conquest invites consequences. We cannot control. We choose cooperation over domination and request guidance from those who have mastered strength without losing wisdom. Captain Hyasu Lee reviewed deployment schedules from her office aboard the newly commissioned TDF Guardian, one of 20 new vessels added to humanity's expanding fleet. The numbers told an incredible story. In just 6 months, the Terran Defense Force had grown from a single task force to a galaxy-spanning organization with mutual defense agreements covering over 40 star systems. It's amazing how quickly everything changed, she reflected during a video conference with her command staff. 6 months ago, we were unknown newcomers who most species considered too primitive for serious consideration. Now we're the galaxy's designated guardians, responsible for protecting civilizations that have existed for thousands of years longer than our own. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Human shipyards were working at maximum capacity to build vessels fast enough to meet growing security demands. Military academies on Earth were graduating officers who would spend their entire careers stationed in alien star systems. Families across human space were adapting to the reality that their loved ones were now protecting species they had never heard of on worlds they couldn't pronounce. But as Captain Hyasu watched the latest convoy of human ships departing for patrol duties in distant systems, she understood that humanity had found its place in the galaxy. They had proven that sometimes the best peacekeepers are those who truly understand the cost of war. And the most effective protectors are those who remember that strength without compassion is just another form of tyranny.